these are going to be some of the greatest minds that the world's ever had. Okay, one more about Edmund Burke. Anyone heard of him? All right, so these are just some of the great philosophers of the time, but there's many more. All right, now what brings their information to others, which makes it possible for other people to understand them, is going to be the start of that grand encyclopedia. So the grand encyclopedia is the people writing for it, they're going to be referred to as, number 4 here, encyclopedists. So an encyclopedist would be someone who writes for the grand encyclopedia in their area of expertise. So, the greatest minds of the time writing in the area that they know best. So one person would be modern French literature. Somebody else who would be science, a particular form of science. Somebody else who would be understanding German philosophy. So people are writing about their areas of expertise. And now you have, for the first time, all that information available to anyone who can read. Remember, the majority of people aren't going to schools, or at least to advanced education. So the only way they're getting this knowledge is going to be the ability to read. As more and more people become literate, they become more questioning of things, they're going to basically be able to have this information available by just reading it in the encyclopedia. So it'd be like, today you have all this information available with Google. Denis Diderot, number 3 here, he was the editor of the Grand Encyclopedia. And he was also himself an encyclopedist. So he's writing in his own area of expertise, but also edits the works of others. So makes them readable and understandable, and decides which ones go in that encyclopedia. So like years ago, before the internet, or common use of the internet, most educated families would have available at home an Encyclopedia Britannica. And then for like 5th or 6th grade, they'd have the World Book Encyclopedia. For maybe lower level college or high school, they had Collier's Encyclopedia. So they had all these different encyclopedias that you could turn to for just basic knowledge, and then that would kind of lead you into where you could find out more information about the topics you were interested in or were trying to research. So suddenly we have all this information available. It's not just going to be, wait a minute, it's in the Bible says it's true, so it's true. Now, just to show you, back in the Middle Ages, how superstitious they were, their system of judgment, where they could tell whether you were guilty or innocent of a crime. Now, you would go before some judges, they would sometimes be able to tell if you did it or you didn't do it. But if they didn't know, what they would do, they would have a priest bless the water, and then tie you up and throw you in the water. And if, so after the priest blessed the water, it's now holy water. So holy water embraces the truth and goodness. So if you were underneath, you didn't come above the surface, then you were innocent. The pure holy water is repulsed by lies and falsehood, so it's going to shove you away. So if you could swim or move away from it, it would show you were guilty. The water was repelling you because it knows that you lied. So that was their idea of jurisprudence. That was their idea of law and truth. So you can see how much more advanced all this is going to be. All right, so let's talk about some of these major ideas coming of the Enlightenment. So this change away from the superstition and just belief unquestionably in the Bible to questioning about everything. Well, one famous figure is going to be Adam Smith. Adam Smith in 1776 writes a book called The Wealth of Nations. And he's an English philosopher. He's not a philosopher, he's not French, but he's an English philosopher at the time of the American Revolution. And Adam Smith writes this book called The Wealth of Nations, talking about what countries need to do to reach their maximum wealth output, become as rich as possible. Now, would you say that's a useful thing to know? 100%. All right, so here's what Adam Smith tells us in The Wealth of Nations. He says, for nations and people to reach their maximum amount of wealth they can make, they have to focus on themselves, on what's best for them. That people know what's best for them financially, and they rationally choose what is best for them financially. And so what he's advocating is the idea of what's called number 6 here, laissez-faire economics, or sometimes called laissez-faire capitalism, also known as economic liberalism. So, does anyone know what does laissez-faire mean? Yeah.
Basically says that the government can't put any controls over someone's business.
Right, good. So hands-off approach to the economy. That the government should not become involved in regulating business. That people know what is best for their business and they should follow what is best for them. So the more the government becomes involved in regulating things, the worse the business does. So sometimes called a leave it alone economic philosophy. Hands off or leave it alone. So he says that's what countries need to follow to become as rich as possible. So have the government get their hands off of the economy. So what determines what something's value is? What somebody is willing to pay for it. It's not the price tag on it. So let's say you sell something on eBay. Now you sell your sweater for $70 because that's what you think it's worth. But what if nobody will pay any more than $20? What's the real value of your sweater? 20, right? Because that's all anyone will pay for it. You can put whatever numbers you want on it, but if nobody's going to buy it at that price, it's not worth that. Now, are you as the seller and the person buying it, are you after the same thing, or are you in opposition to each other? Well, you as the seller, you're trying to make as much money as you can, right? You're trying to sell it for the highest price that anyone will pay for it. What about the buyer? Do they want you to make the highest price you can? No. They want to get a deal. They want to get it at the lowest price that you'll sell it for. So the real value of it is what the connection between what the buyer will pay and the seller will sell it for. So that's the real value of something. Same thing with wages. Okay, now, you think you should get $17 an hour for flipping a burger. Let's say. Now, is that what the employer really wants to pay you? They want to pay you $2 an hour if they can get away with it. But you don't really want 17, you really want $40 an hour. So how do they get any workers? They get it when you're willing to work for that wage and they're willing to pay you that wage. So where the two parties agree, that's what the real value of your labor is. So that's what he's talking about, this government having a hands-off approach. It has nothing to do with the government. If the government's not supposed to care how much you're paid for your burger, I mean how much you're willing to work to make the burger, and the government also doesn't care how much profit the employer makes. It's a private agreement between you and your employer. What does that have to do with the government? That's the philosophy of laissez-faire. So hands-off approach by the government. So he says that's how countries reach their maximum output. And we're going to see he's basically right. Because in the 19th century, England's going to become richer than any country ever did before it. When America starts following a laissez-faire policy, it's also going to become very rich. That's when you see all these millionaires arising after the Civil War. So it sounds good, right? But here's the down part. Just because the country's becoming rich, does that mean the individuals are? No. That's what Marx is going to start criticizing, the fact that the few people at the top are following the system, making a ton of money. The government's doing well because it's taxing all this, but the poor workers are working 14 hours a day and getting paid next to nothing. Okay, so anyway, that's Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. So countries reach their maximum wealth output by having a hands-off approach to the economy, where people follow what's in their own best interest, that they know for themselves what is best for them economically. You don't need the government to tell them what to do. All right, another Enlightenment philosopher, this one also English, John Locke. All right, John Locke, one of his theories is one called Tabula Rasa. And Tabula Rasa means blank slate. So it's a Latin term. It means the idea that everybody is born with a blank slate. He's going against the religious idea of original sin. So according to a lot of religious beliefs, you're born sinful. You're created in a sinful act, and you come into the world drenched in sin. And then, the baptism wipes it away. But that's not what Locke believes. Locke says you're not a good person or a bad person when you're born. You're neutral. Instead, what you become is not going to be what you're born with, but it's instead the way the society shapes you. So you're born with a blank slate, and then the imprints of society make you who you are. So the old nature versus nurture question. So he's arguing much more for nurture. How society shapes you is what you become. So, think for what kind of supports this. Think for a minute, 2 and 3-year-olds, or 3 and 4-year-olds playing together. Are they going to know differences of, are they going to notice differences of race and class? No, they're just going to play, right? What about 10 years later? Definitely. And you see this in the dining hall. Now, everyone is free to sit next to whomever they want. You can sit, those tables are all open. What usually happens, notice there are certain groups. So you're picking who you feel most comfortable with, and it's usually someone of your own background. No one's forcing that on you, that's your decision. But where do you get those views? You're getting it from the society around you. What you read, what you see on the internet, what you hear in your classes, your own experiences. So the society is shaping who you are. And that's what he says. You're born with a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and the imprints of society make you who you are for good or for evil, whatever direction you end up. So going against this idea of born sinfully of a sinful act. All right, now my own personal favorite of these Enlightenment philosophers is number 8 here, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And you can tell with that nasally sound, he's certainly not going to be English. He is going to be French. Okay, so Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he is, he's a perfect, okay, first of all, he becomes known as kind of the patron saint of the hippies. So the hippies are going to love him. And we'll see why in just a second. All right, so Jean-Jacques is a bureaucrat. So a bureaucrat, a government official working for one of these bureaucracies. How do you define a bureaucracy? Or where do we see a bureaucracy? What would be an example of one? Well, all right, let me ask this. All right, let's say you decide at the last second, all right, when the classes started, I don't know, the 25th, something like that. So if you decided, wait a minute, I didn't think about it, but I probably don't have enough money to really go to Del Valle. I don't have that much cash around. I think I'm going to just get a student loan. I'm going to get it August 23rd. I'm just going to, go fill out a form. They're going to just give me the money, and a day or two they'll send it to Del Valle. Any chance of that happening that way? No. This is a huge bureaucracy. You have to fill out all the forms, several months in advance. They have to be certified by Harrisburg, and then Del Valle, and then your bank, and then they do all these different checks. It goes, back and forth and back and forth, and the school knows this is going to happen, so that's why even if they haven't gotten the money, they still want you to be able to go to school, and they want to eventually get your money. So what do? They'll put everything as pending, which means, it'll stay that way until they actually get the money, because they know it's a big bureaucracy. Or let's say you have a problem. Let's say your water bill's too high. Can you easily get it solved? Can you just call someone and they'll immediately fix it, or are you going to be on hold for 30 minutes and then they'll transfer you to someone else and you'll listen to some beautiful music for 20 minutes and they'll tell you how important you are to them, and then suddenly it's the end of the day and they'll ask you to very politely call back tomorrow. Click. That's a bureaucracy. And the bigger the institution is, the more bureaucratic it is. Well, he's a bureaucrat, so he's a paper pusher. He's filling out a lot of forms that nobody wants to read, nobody really cares about, but they always check to make sure that they're done. It's like if you go in to see your doctor, are you going to immediately go in? Or do you have to fill out a million forms, and you see the nurse, and you see the nurse practitioner, then you'll see the doctor for 30 seconds. Right? Okay. Example of a bureaucracy. So he's in this job. He does not like filling out a bunch of forms. He doesn't care about for people who don't care if they're done, or he just feels there's no real purpose. Okay, but he's paid fairly well, so he does it. But he's a middle-class Frenchman, and someone of his background, he's expected to support his wife. Someone of that class, the woman does not work, he supports her. He has kids, so he has to pay for them. As a good, Frenchman at the time, he has to join some church, whether he believes it or not. And the church, as soon as you go there, they're going to grab some of your money. They get the 10%, the tithing, then they come up with a special fund fund for this, a special fund for that, and do they ask you if you want to give to it, or is it expected you're going to give? Expected, okay. So you start paying that. But then he also gets taxes. Taxes to the king, taxes to the state, taxes to the local government. Then his kids always want something, so he has to pay for that. And then, and when the kid knows they're going to have people asking for money for the causes that they find important. So all he's doing, he's making good money, but he doesn't get to spend any of it on himself. It's all going to these things he doesn't really even want to spend it on. So he's working at a job all the time. It's something he doesn't care about. And is he being thanked for this? Is everyone grateful? Are his kids grateful? Is his wife grateful? Is the church grateful? Is the king grateful? No, you just have to do it. So he gets fed up and he basically drops out of life. He tells he says, enough. He tells the kids, I'm not supporting you anymore. Good luck. He tells his wife, you don't have to keep my name anymore. I'm not going to support you. I wish you well. He quits his job and says, I've had it with this job. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not doing it. You don't have to pay me, but I'm not going to do any work for you. So what does he do? He goes wandering in the woods for about 10 years. And then how does he support himself? He's kind of a dashing-looking guy in a roguish sort of way. He finds kind of older women particularly rich older women who want to support him. Now, when he gets tired of them, he leaves. If they get bored of him, they tell him to go. No hard feelings with anybody. When he can't find somebody to support him, he'll just sleep in a barn somewhere and grab some eggs. And he sees a pie cooling in the window. He grabs a piece on the run. He doesn't really care what he looks like anymore. So if he sees some clothes hanging there, he'll just grab a pair from here and another one from here. And just a real simple, plain life. But he feels free. He can do what he wants. He lives on his schedule. He doesn't owe anyone anything. No one owes him anything. So that's what he writes about in his book called My Confessions. About how everyone should be free. Nobody should owe anyone anything. There shouldn't be all these responsibilities. There shouldn't be all these expectations. Everyone is ultimately, or should be ultimately free. Okay, now, can you see why the hippies would like this? Why it'd be popular with them? Because they're doing basically the same thing. They work as little as possible. They work just long enough to buy some food or some drugs. If they would rather have the drugs than the foods, they don't notice that they're hungry. It's their business. They don't care. No one else really cares. They look for the easiest job they can find, and they keep it as long as they can, then move on to another one. They don't worry about their appearance anymore. They sleep with whomever they want, who's willing to be with them, and sometimes it's a group fine. If it's somebody, sometimes it's only one person fine. They don't owe anyone anything, so everyone's free to leave when they feel like it. So same kind of thing. So anyway, that's what we see there in My Confessions. So ultimate subjectivity, that you don't owe anyone anything. There's no rules, there's no regulations, there's no responsibility. Freedom of the individual. All right, now leading up into the French Revolution, does anyone know the date of the French Revolution? All right, date of the French Revolution. First of all, it is going to be after the American Revolution. And the date of the American Revolution, of course, 1776. the date of the French Revolution, 1789. So around the same time. And it's going to be very inspired by the American Revolution. Now, leading up into the French Revolution, the government in France during the 1600s and the 1700s, leading up into the French Revolution, is called the Ancien regime. Now, we want to make it ancient, but it's not ancient, it's ancien. What's the difference? Ancien means old. What's the difference between just being old and being ancient? Okay, is it ancient news or old news that President Trump got his mug shot done? Old, right? You would say that's ancient, you know. Ancient's usually thousands of years ago. But if we talk about something being old news, you know, you've heard it already. So the food in the cafeteria, is that old or ancient? No, just kidding. It was actually pretty good today. But, all right, so the Ancien regime, the regime means a government. So the government in place, it means the former government before the French Revolution. So that the Ancien regime, the old regime during the 1600s and the 1700s. And at the top of the Ancien regime, what you're going to find is a divine right monarch. Another word for a divine right monarch, you sometimes also see them listed as absolute monarchs. So a divine right monarch or an absolute monarch, that means that the monarch, king, is put in place by God. That's what divine right means. So he says his authority, his legitimacy, it comes directly from God. He argues that if God did not want him to be king, God would not make him king. Nice self-serving philosophy to have, right? You can argue with that. You don't like it, argue with God about it. And he's called an absolute monarch because it means he has ultimate power. No one questions him. And whatever he says goes. Because he's put in place by God. Okay, everyone else in the society, though, is one of three social classes. Three social classes that everybody was part of, they're going to be referred to as estates. So there's a first estate, a second estate, and a third estate. All right. Now at the top is the divine right monarch, who's not one of the estates. But then we have the first estate, is what they call the gentleman clergy. So the gentleman clergy, actually should be plural. The gentlemen, not man, men. The gentleman clergy they make up about 1% of the population. They're the clerical members. They're the priests and the Monsignor and the bishops and the archbishop. So anyone in the Roman Catholic hierarchy. And they pay no taxes. They live in big homes owned by the church. Think like a parsonage or something. They have they do no manual labor. All they basically do is marry people, bury people, and write sermons. So hold masses, marry people, bury people, and write sermons. And they get a good salary that comes from the church. And they get one vote as a class. And they're very highly respected. So you say that's a pretty good job. No taxes, big house, servants, not that much work, and they're called the first estate because they're seen as highest to God, closest to God. But as I said, they only make up 1% of the population. All right, so does anyone have any questions about the first estate? All right, so now let's talk about the second estate, number 11. Okay, the second estate, they are called the aristocracy. The aristocracy or nobility. So that is anyone with a title. Sir, Lord, Marquis, Count, Duke, Squire. So anyone with a noble title. They do no work at all. They don't do any manual work. They don't do any intellectual work. They don't. All they do is their whole life is centered around enjoyment. They get. They make up about 2% of the population. They get one vote as a class. And they pay no taxes. And what their life is centered around is something called conspicuous consumption. So that means buying useless things just to show off that you're rich enough to get them. So I'll give you an example of conspicuous consumption. Now, when car air conditioners first came out, when they were the newest invention, people would sometimes run their air conditioners full blast with their windows down so people could hear that they had it. They got more enjoyment out of showing off that they had this new gadget that no one else had than they did actually getting cooled from the air conditioner. So buying useless things purposely to show off. They are known for having very extravagant parties. They often own several homes with full staffs at each one. They inherit their wealth. It's been passed on often from the Middle Ages. And there's a term that kind of describes what a lot of them do. You call someone drunk as a lord. So what that means is, unlike most people, when do we have most of our parties? Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, right? It used to be Friday and Saturday, but notice we don't have too many classes here on Friday. They have a term for today, Thursday. Okay, but so some great parties Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I don't know things. All right, but why do we have parties on Friday and Saturday night, but usually not on Sunday? Get to work or school the next day, okay. But what if you never had any responsibilities, you never had to go anywhere other than where you want to go, you had all the money you wanted to spend on alcohol, and if you made a big mess, you have a servant to clean it up for you. Then you could drink any darn day you feel like it. So many of their parties centered around just showing off all the new things they had. So they would be particularly extravagant at these parties. The goal was to show how rich you were, so they would often have like 100 different food items, all of them very complex and expensive ingredients. Then they would have a taste of this, a taste of that, and throw the rest away. They'd have a sip of 100-year-old cognac and dump the rest. So they could open up a new bottle. So extravagant waste, because that's where the status came from. So would you say that's a pretty good life to have? Yep. So that's only the second estate. So these two are considered the nobility. I mean, these two are considered all right. Let's just keep it like this. Okay. So we have these two, but then notice that's only 3% of the population. So everyone else is a commoner. So they are part of the third estate. So let's see who makes up the third estate. All right, to make up the third estate is divided into two sub-estates. At the top is going to be the bourgeoisie. Another word for the bourgeoisie is the middle class. The bourgeoisie makes up about 10% of the population. And they're the most educated people in society. They're the ones who go to school. They're the ones who become doctors and lawyers and teachers and accountants and bankers. And they're the ones that have skills. They're also the ones who become usually the Philosophes. So they're the ones reading newspapers all the time, seeing what's going on in the rest of the world. So they're looking at England, they're saying, why can't we be more like England? Regular people have more chance. Why can't we be more like America? America, all these new opportunities available. They don't care how rich you are in America or what background you're from, they just care, what you personally accomplish. So they're saying that's what we want France to be more like. So the bourgeoisie is saying that. But notice that's only 10% of the population. So then who makes up the other 87%? peasants. So the peasants make up 87% of the population. Now, your average peasant can't read, they can't write, they don't even have, they don't vote because they don't even know what a vote is. They're basically seen as human work animals. Just to show you how unimportant the peasants were in the society, when the plow first came out in the 12th century, they had peasants pulling it instead of horses. They said the horse is too valuable, you don't want to waste the horse energy. You don't want to have to replace their horseshoes, they're expensive. The horse could be pulling something too heavy and get hurt. Horses are valuable, peasants are not. One hurts themselves, who cares, you get another one. So the horse would watch as the peasant pulls the plow. Things did not change a whole lot in 500 years. One of my professors called them the potato heads. So they wore like an Idaho baked potato colored jacket, like that, brown jacket, and then they had like a big fat dumpy face with two little potato bug eyes. Okay, so this is the majority of the people. All they do is work. They're not complaining about their job, that's all they think life can be. They're a continuation of the medieval serf, where all they do is work and focus all the time on heaven. So while the third estate gets a vote, the only part using the vote is the bourgeoisie, because they're the only ones that know that you can vote. So now, looking at this system, who do you think is going to be the most discontent with it?
The bourgeoisie.
Why them instead of the peasants?
Because they understand where their place is.
Exactly. They know things can be different. The peasant doesn't. They're not thinkers. All they do is work. Okay, so this is the kind of system that we have there. Okay, I guess we'll let it go with that for today, and then we'll sort of continue what's happening. Did I put up the discussion board for you guys? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like a certain